So, you have a good night last night? Hi, welcome to Big Brother's Little Brother. I hope you're very well. Very serious show today, and absolutely no apologies for it, because we've got some very serious subject matter to talk about. It's obviously the morning after the night before. Let's get straight down to discussing last night's events in a moment. Mike Fisher, who's founder member of the British Association for Anger Management, will be telling us how the housemates should have handled the situation. But we kick off, as we always do, with Little Brother's big news. So, last night at approximately 10:45, Emma and Michelle were finally allowed back into the house from the bedsit to be reunited with their unsuspecting housemates. The way they were introduced back into the house caught everyone by surprise. Here's how it happened and the reactions of the other housemates.
Is this chocolate cake? Is this...
So, as you can see, a very mixed reaction to the return of the girls, and there was tension from the off. After a number of heated exchanges and barbed comments from both camps in the house, a food fight broke out involving Nadia, Marco and Emma. This proved to be the straw that broke the camel's back. Jason stormed into the house and confronted them about their behaviour. The ensuing confrontation involved everyone. Insults were traded, plates were thrown, doors were kicked in as the face-off escalated. Security was then called into the house to restore order, and this is how it all unfolded.
You better clean every of this up.
Hold on, what's the point?
I'm not gonna love chimpanzees, man. These are animals. Animals!
You gotta see me again. So you will, whether you like it or not, mate, you will see me again.
Incredible. As you can imagine, after last night's events, the house was then fairly quiet this morning. The housemates attempted to patch up their differences over a nice spot of housework.
Do you know what they called it? What? Hey guys, Big Brother has provided you with a non-electrical instrument.
Non-electrical?
I was like, oh, you mean a broom, yeah? Oh, what a joke.
And that was Little Brother's big news. So we can assure you the housemates are all right. Nothing's kicked off today. As proof, we have some evidence of them doing everyday, normal stuff that they've been up to today. Let's take a look at that right now. Here we go. Sitting down, cleaning. There's Dan cleaning, look. Stuart just looking like a cowboy. Nadia there having a look round. See, they're just looking. Michelle looking like a little nymph. Michelle there, she seems happy. And there's Jay. See? It's all fine. Nothing to worry about here. Obviously, a lot went on in the house last night. With that in mind, today's cool BBLB could only be, how should the housemates sort this out? These are the numbers to call. Okie dokes, here to talk us through the two main areas of conflict is Mike Fisher. I want to call you Dr. Mike Fisher, I don't know why. Is the founder of British Association for Anger Management. Mike Fisher. Hello, Mike. Thanks for coming on.
Hi.
Very short notice, I might add, as well.
Thanks very much.
Anger management.
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, essentially, it's about teaching people how to manage their anger. Different people have different ways of managing anger, and they get out of control. So part of my job, part of my responsibility is to teach people how to contain their anger and learn how to be assertive rather than angry.
Sure. So how can you narrow it down? Because, anger must affect people so individually.
Well, essentially what you'll find is people who are really out of control, who really lose it, who, hurt and impact their loved ones, who hurt and impact strangers, and obviously hurt and impact work colleagues, etc., etc. So
this is emotionally and physically, yeah?
That's more domestic violence.
Yeah.
I'm really talking about emotionally.
Yeah.
But sure, I mean, there is a very fine line and there's
Sure.
a crossover, of course.
Sure.
But essentially, it's focusing and working with individuals who recognize that they have anger management problems and they're desperate to actually manage their anger.
And do you have sort of like certain theories as to, that will apply to, you know, everybody?
Everybody's unique,
Yeah.
of course, and everybody has different issues, but when you boil down those issues, it comes to a kind of some really key components, which is one is I want you to value me and respect me, the other is that I want to be seen and heard, I want to know that I belong, I want to know that you actually care for me.
Sure.
And if that doesn't happen, that usually translates into conflict.
We've got the right man for the job. OK, there's a lot to get through, so let's cut straight to the first angry outburst. Here's what happened between Jason and Marco.
Just a bit too much for you tonight.
No, I'm just chilling out, man.
Chilling.
I know, Michelle. Isn't it wicked?
It's madness.
Oh, the incredible sleeping man returns.
Do you think this is funny, do you? You better clean every bit of this up.
Am I?
Yeah, you all will. Yeah,
do.
yeah, you will. Come in my face and do that again, you wee dog. Don't ever dance in front of me again like again, all right?
OK, so what happened and how could it have been avoided?
Well, I mean, clearly in a situation like that, Marco was really trying to wind Jason up. And keeping in mind that Jason hasn't had a lot of sleep, keeping in mind that Jason's bed was trashed, keeping in mind that two women that he dislikes arrived back in the house, keeping in mind that they've had a fair amount of alcohol, is a really wonderful recipe and a volatile cocktail for anger.
I mean, let's just take them one at a time.
Sure.
Jason, obviously, Marco antagonised him. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
You know, from the snide laughter to dancing in his face to spreading water on him. How should he contain his anger? What should he have done there?
Well, I think Marco should have been much more open, more honest with Jason. You know, and I'm not talking about in that particular scene. I'm talking about throughout the series. But Marco's aware that Jason doesn't like him, so he could have started having a conversation and brought that out into the open and found out what the problems are, what the issues are. So that's one of the things that Marco could have done.
What about Jason? I mean, Jason...
Well, I think the same thing. I mean, it's interesting with Jason because his anger barometer was already rising, so it was only a matter of time before he kind of lost it. So maybe what Jason could have done was actually looked at the big picture. Maybe what he could have done is not taken anything personally. Maybe what he could have done was actually kept the lines of communication opened. And every time he was wound up by Marco is to have the conversation.
Jason's one of the real sort of alpha males in this group as well. So this is almost, is it like a threat to his dominance in many ways? Is that kind of, do you think that's what,
well, it was
got the heckles there?
Well, it was interesting because in that cut, you know, what I was imagining is like the father walks in to the room and starts to berate the naughty kids.
Sure.
And that's, you know, classical alpha male positioning. And it's totally inappropriate. I mean, basically what he's trying to do is to dominate the group.
Yeah. Well, I think it was his last straw almost. It was his last card to play, wasn't it? Because they were just practically just ignoring him. It was getting him more and more agitated, I suppose. Yeah,
I mean, it starts out as him being quite reasonable, and then eventually it's like he has to assert himself in the group. Or keeping in mind that there are two alpha males. It's not just Jason.
Yeah, it's Victor as well, which leads us on. Second conflict happened between Emma and Victor. There's been trouble between them in the past. Last night it all bowled over. Let's take a look.
Look like a boy, innit? And remember, you don't talk to good-looking girls. I mean, no, minging girls. You only talk to good-looking girls, don't you? Right, I love you and leave you. See you in a bit. Bye!
OK, so Emma's plan of going back in the house and not saying anything and playing it very shrewd lasted about 15 minutes. And then...
Is that all?
Well, a bit longer than that, but certainly not very long. They don't like each other, and they've said they don't like each other to each other's face now about 5 times. It really boiled over last night. How could they have avoided coming to this? Because they were throwing things at each other. No one wants to see that. Well,
I mean, I remember seeing some of the footage when they're in the bedsit, and one of the things that Emma was becoming more and more and more angry towards Victor.
Yes.
And, you know, one of her commitments was not to actually say anything.
Yes.
But because she's uncontainable, because she's really, really angry, she's an angry woman, in my opinion. And it was only a matter of time before it spilt out. Now, how do you manage that? Well, the way you manage that is, in a situation like that, I actually see it as quite difficult because it was such a surprise and such a shock to everybody, if people really happy and people unhappy. So she was like caught up in the moment. But what she could have maybe done, if the situation was very different, I imagine that what she could have done is also had the conversation. She could have recognized that she doesn't have to take what he says and does personally. And I think between them, they were kind of both looking for an argument. So one of the ways I would say that would probably move forward is that in that conflict that they had, maybe post the conflict, they'll find a new way of relating to each other, talking to each other.
If those two people are looking for a conflict, is there any way of avoiding it?
No.
Not at all?
No. I mean, something gets triggered, something gets activated, and it just has to go through its own, I call it riding the rapids.
Right.
It's only when I kind of pop out on the other side and I stop and I reflect on the situation, it's then that I can maybe have the conversation with you. But it depends on how bad it gets. Now, unfortunately, they're in the same house. They can't leave the house, can they now?
Yeah.
So they have to find a new way of having a conversation, having a dialogue, because they're very similar.
I was going to say, do you think there's any way they can end up being friends off the back of this?
Well, you know, my take on that is they are very, very similar in their behaviours, and when they see certain behaviours in each other that they don't like, they tend to project it onto the other person. So what they might need to do is to actually recognise how similar they are, and if they recognise that they're similar, maybe they can meet in a common ground.
Excellent. OK. Well, two people kind of came out smelling of roses to a degree last night. We had two mediators. Stuart through his actions, Dan through his words. Let's take a look at those two.
Nadia, we need to calm down.
Yeah, I know. I'm calm down now, Dan.
So-
I'm calm down. I'm calm down now. I'm calm
I just
down.
want to speak to you for a couple of seconds.
OK, how effective are both of these? Stuart there had his arm around Vic, the old DNA, and he didn't get a slap.
I mean, my take on that is really that I would never do that myself, but because Stuart has a relationship with Jason anyway. Jason, is that right?
Sorry,
with
Victor.
with Victor
He's
anyway.
universally popular, Stuart, as well. I mean,
Yes,
he hasn't had
yeah,
a nomination
yeah.
in the House.
So he can play that game. He can actually he can behave like that. I mean, personally, I would actually do what I can to not actually get involved physically. So because he's popular and because he has a relationship with Victor, he can actually do that. And hopefully, and I don't know where it goes, but hopefully find a way of calming him down.
Yes.
Sometimes it can actually incite more anger.
Sure.
So I know his intention is to de-escalate, but it could possibly escalate.
OK, what about Dan? Because the whole point of... I mean, he did step back, so he didn't placate anything right there and then, but afterwards he sat people down and said, you know, what are you doing there? And he's been doing that all day today as
Absolutely. So you could say on some level Dan's like the peacekeeper, and he's trying to make sure that everybody behaves reasonably, adult and are calm. So personally, I think that's probably the most effective way of going about it. You know, trying to round up the troops, trying to make sure that people start looking at the big picture and begin hopefully to start having conversations and recognise there's a lot of differences, but they need to be spoken out. So in a way, you know, that's his job, peacekeeper.
Sure. OK, lastly, Mike, how do you think the housemates move on from here as a group?
OK. I mean, essentially, there are a couple of things that I want to say. One is that in any group dynamic, you've got 5 phases. Yeah, and this is classic group dynamic. You've got forming, that's what they've been doing. Now we've experienced storming.
And how?
And that's the second part of the phase. Then you have this norming, performing, and then mourning. And the mourning is when everybody says goodbye to each other and they're going to miss each, etc., etc., etc. But that's an important part of the process, storming. Now, in a situation like that, they don't really have a choice. They have to find a way of actually relating. So part and parcel of the task is to begin having conversations, being more authentic at the house, and actually start speaking their feelings and telling people what they think and what they feel, rather than to bicker behind their backs and break up into those little subgroups, which just doesn't work, as we've seen.
It's like a marriage, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like a family.
Yeah. Brilliant. Mike, you're with us for Call BBLB later on. Thank you very much for the time being. Coming up after the break, a much prettier picture. We're looking at 2 nominees' self-portraits with colour psychologist Angela Wright. We'll see you in a minute. was interesting, that, wasn't it? Welcome back to Big Brother's Little Brother. Hope you're very well. Let's have a look at what's going on in the house now to make sure everyone's all right. There's Dan. Vanessa, she looks happy. Now, I assure you, 30 seconds ago, they were actually having a big old hug and enjoying it immensely. And Vanessa there. So Vanessa, she was very unhappy last night, but she looks like she's getting through it now, which is a good thing. More from that later on, I'm sure. OK, before they entered the Big Brother house, each housemate drew us a self-portrait. Stan and Vanessa are up for eviction on Friday. We thought we'd take a look at how they see themselves. Here to help us do that is Angela Wright, colour psychologist, everyone. Hello, Angela.
Hi.
Nice to see you again.
Indeed.
Nice to see you. Colour psychology. Please explain it to us in layman terms.
Oh, right, yes. How long have you got? Well, people think it's only about a matter of how things look, but actually colour is influencing mood and behaviour every waking moment. And it's also nature's own signalling system. We all use colour to express things. And we all pick up those messages, but most of the time it's unconscious.
Sure.
So people don't realise what they're actually saying about themselves.
So if I was in a bad mood and someone else asked me to draw a self-portrait, the chances are I would use different colours than if I wasn't in a good
Precisely.
mood. How interesting. OK, is it the colour or the picture that says most? I know you're very much focused
Well,
on
I obviously always look first to the colours. Actually, everybody does, interestingly. It's an instinct to look at colour first for information.
Right.
But obviously the picture itself has a huge bearing too.
What kind of things can we tell from colour? Mood?
Mood, absolutely. What's going on in somebody's mind? What mood they're in at that particular moment.
Yeah.
And obviously, in the greater scheme of things, their ongoing preference for a particular colour will tell us something about their basic personality.
Oh, good. I'm glad you said that, because let's have a look at these two pictures. First up is Vanessa's.
Right.
Come with me here. They're two very contrasting pictures, Angela, I think you'll find. First up is Vanessa's. Now, I think Vanessa's quite a good artist, because this is quite good.
Wow, yes.
Look at the cheekbone structure there.
Amazing.
Isn't that nice?
Yes.
So what are these colours telling us?
I wish I could do that.
I wish I looked like that. So,
well, I'm glad you don't.
Obviously, there's yellows there, but what's with the brown and the red and...
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously flesh tones, you know, do vary, but actually the end result of that is very red. It's very strongly red, and the eyes are unnaturally green. And I think, actually, Vanessa has blue eyes.
She does have blue eyes, you're right, yeah.
So maybe she is trying to convince herself, or possibly convince us, that she's a lot more colourful than she sees herself.
OK.
Or that she's actually a bit feline, a bit more powerful. You know, those green eyes are making a strong statement.
What about the lips there?
Well, they're very sort of full.
Yeah, they're very sort of bulbous.
Sensuous, yes. Yeah, and she's, of course, coloured them very red, which is a classic. It's a cliché in colour psychology.
What's that telling us, that red? I'm a lady not to be trifled with.
It's before the watershed.
Oh, really? Is that a bit fruity, is it?
A little bit, yeah.
Interesting, OK. And the browns, is that saying
yes,
anything
well,
in
no, that's not really saying much. It's just kind of trying to get the flesh tones, which is a bit difficult, really.
Cool. OK, that's Vanessa's. Let's move over to Dan's. This is going to shock you. This is Dan's self-portrait. Now...
Right, I see.
Explain to me, please. Because I know we haven't got long, but what does this mean?
Well, it means that Dan is absolutely determined that nobody is going to see him at all. He's not going to expose anything.
Right.
I mean, if you give anyone a task to do and you give them lots of colours to do it with, and they absolutely refuse to use the colours and they do it in black and white, they're actually making a strong statement.
Sure, I have to stress this. They were given a full pack of crayons to do this.
Yes.
So he's just used black, grey and obviously white, which is
yes. But now black and grey tend to suppress all emotion. Which is why, of course, black is so popular in fashion.
Sure.
Because it's a
briefly,
barrier.
What's with the headphones?
I can't hear anybody.
OK.
And the red indicates that he's actually pretty determined to protect himself from too much intrusion.
Closed book.
Yeah, exactly.
Lastly, based on what we've learned from these two characters, who's going to take it hardest if they're evicted?
Well, certainly just from these two pictures, I would say Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I would have gone with that as well. There's the smart money.
Yeah.
Angela, thank you very much. So, it is Dan or it is Van. Who it is that goes on Friday, you decide, and these are the numbers to call. In just a moment, call BBLB, but first a quick roundup of last night's news. Last night, Michelle and Emma were reintroduced to the house in the most unusual way. The housemates each reacted very differently. having the girls back in the house proved to be a catalyst for some of the most extraordinary scenes ever seen on Big Brother. I think there's any debate there. And today the mood was very sombre. The housemates went about returning to the house to its former glory. A little bit of clean in there. OK, today's cool BBLB is how should the housemates sort this out? Mike's still with us. So let us go to the phones as quickly as possible. First up should be Lisa from Luton. Hello, Lisa.
Hi, Dermot.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Incredible what's going on in the house, isn't it?
It certainly is.
OK, what's your theory on it? How should they sort it out from here?
Well, I definitely think they need to communicate more with each other. I agree with the doctor. Hello to him as well.
I like the fact everyone's calling you the doctor.
And I think that since some of them have problems communicating, that they should maybe get some sumo suits in there and maybe work their aggression out through that where nobody can get hurt.
You're thinking about a bit of catharsis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that work?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
I think it's a great... Because nobody gets hurt, but it gives them the opportunity to vent and emotionally release all that anger and frustration. Great idea.
Absolutely.
Is that what you do at home? Do you trash some inanimate objects just to...
Well, I have 3 children who do all that for me.
Lovely. Yeah, OK. You're a time bomb, Lisa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
OK, we've got a brilliant email here from Adele in Portugal. I think Big Brother should sit the housemates down together and show them the footage of what happened. You let them debate about it and then take it from there. As the housemates are in a calmer mood, it should provoke an adult discussion rather than an argument. What do you think?
I think it's a great idea. I think it's an absolutely brilliant idea.
Almost like the embarrassment factor, I suppose.
Yeah. You see, what it does, it starts to expose the fakeness, the phoniness, the fear of conflict, and the fear of anger and discomfort and the pain of it. So when they start to really observe their own behaviour, they can start making their own connections and how they can change and adapt their behaviour to create something which is what's the right word? More connected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
OK, just a couple more emails before we go. I think I should kick Emma out because she deserved everything she's got from Patrice in Worthing. I think the housemates should all write down what they think or what they like about the housemates and be forced to focus on the good things. Not a bad idea, is it?
I think it's a fantastic idea.
Mike, thank you very much. That's all we've got time for tonight. Big thanks to Mike Fisher, Angela Wright. Tune in for the main show tonight, 10 o'clock, Channel 4, to get the full story on last night's events. And we're back tomorrow, 6 o'clock, Channel 4. We'll see you then. Have a good night. Be nice to each other.